What is up, Insaners, and welcome to another video of the Fantasy Premier League 2021-22 season. Today we'll be talking about the best wildcard strategy and some of the best drafts for Game Week 34. Now we'll also deep dive into why and who should use the wildcard chip this week. We'll look at the best case and the worst case possibility. If you enjoyed today's video, guys, make sure that you hit the like button. You can also consider subscribing if you're new around here. Now we'll start with why you should wildcard in Game Week 34. I think when you talk about a wildcard in Game Week 34, there are a few reasons why you should do it. Of course, one of the first reasons and the obvious one is that Chelsea is suddenly now doubling in 34 because of their FA Cup win against Crystal Palace. Now they have a double game week fixture in Game Week 34. Now that really helps, and I think it's the best time to get on to Chelsea assets. I don't think so we should wait for Game Week 36 when Chelsea have another double. I think if you want to jump on to assets from Man City and Chelsea, I think this is the right time. I think in general a wildcard in Game Week 34 makes a lot of sense because depending on whether you have your bench boost available and if you're using it in Game Week 36, you can accordingly make your team. Now in a possibility when you don't have a bench boost available, let's say when you have a free hit available and you also have an option of using that in Game Week 36 or 37, and accordingly you can set up your team from Game Week 34. Another very important reason of using the wildcard in Game Week 34, guys, is that you can get rid of all your deadwood players, of all the players that you were anyways trying to get rid of, and the best part is that you don't have to take any hits for them. You can just push the wildcard button, get a fresh squad from Game Week 34 till 38. You can of course get in a couple of great differentials from Man City as well, because I think if you are on a wildcard, the idea should be to kind of probably change the team structure a little bit, not invest too much money in attack, and probably try to gain advantage from those Man City and Chelsea assets. Of course, the final decision depends on you, but I think Game Week 34 is a safe and it's the right way and the right time to use the wildcard. To be honest, guys, you probably shouldn't overthink this and just press the button and go for it. Now with that, let's get into our first wildcard draft for Game Week 34. Guys, for the ease of convenience, I've divided these drafts into two categories. The first category is when you don't have your bench boost available, and the second category is when you have your bench boost available and you are planning to use it in Game Week 36. Now let's start with the first draft. In goal, we have Schmeichel and Foster. I think this is taking care in terms of, let's say you don't have your bench boost available and you don't want to use your bench. So you can invest in a second keeper. You can probably put in some less money in a second keeper. I think Foster is a regular starter for Watford and he's very cheap, so he's in there. Now in terms of a main playing keeper, I think there are a couple of decent options to go for. But in terms of the number of fixtures that are there for a particular team and the starting 11 place pretty much fixed and set to go, I think Schmeichel is a decent option to go for. He's not very expensive, so that's one advantage. Now the disadvantage with Schmeichel is that Leicester really don't have a great defensive line. I mean, they don't really keep a lot of clean sheets. Their defensive numbers are also not that great. Yes, they've slightly improved over the past few weeks, but I still don't see Leicester keeping a lot of clean sheets. So in case if you want to go for another keeper, and we'll talk about it in one of the later drafts that we have, you can also go for the likes of an Edison, maybe even Alisson from Liverpool. I think Alisson is probably a bit tricky because you have really good options from the Liverpool team. But I think in general you can go for somebody like an Edison who's pretty much nailed in that Man City lineup. I think that's still a bit tricky to say for a Pep's team. In terms of the other positions, in terms of the defense, guys, we've gone a bit heavy in terms of defense. Of course, we have the double up on Chelsea defense. We have the likes of James and Alonso both in the lineup. The reason we've gone for James and Alonso and not for Rudiger is that there's huge attacking upside with both these players. Yes, there could be slight rotation in terms of minutes. They might miss certain minutes. They might even miss a game. But I think the gains that they can give you over a Rudiger, who's probably a 6-pointer or maybe a 2-pointer if Chelsea don't keep a clean sheet, I think, guys, that's massive. We know James, if he's playing in the wing back position, he's not playing as a centre back. I think he can give you a lot of FPL points. The upside is massive, guys. He can score goals, he can create goals. I think similar thing can be said about Alonso as well. I think he's also pretty much nailed now in that Chelsea lineup. I don't think so Chelsea will go with a lot of rotation, especially when they don't really have a lot to play for apart from the league. Yes, they have the FA Cup game still remaining, but I still don't think Alonso would be rotated heavily. And if you want to go for a differential punt, if you feel that a lot of people already have the likes of Rudiger, and I think a lot of people now would try to get in James, and if you don't have a lot of money, guys, you can definitely target Alonso for your team. In terms of the other positions, guys, we've gone for Trent. I think he's pretty much picked himself in the squad. He's probably one of the core members in this defensive lineup. Now, apart from that, of course, you can go for a double up on Liverpool as well. You probably can shift some funds and then also go for a Robertson, so that's also an option. But for this particular draft, we've only gone for Trent. His attacking numbers are great, he's pretty much nailed, and I think you can depend on him for attacking returns as well, so I think he's a great pick. In terms of the other options, guys, now we have to pick somebody from Man City as well. Man City have great fixtures. They're a great defensive team. They are keeping clean sheets. And if I have to choose one, the obvious answer, guys, has to be Cancelo. I mean, it, of course, helps you cover all your bases in terms of playing safe, in terms of effective ownership and all that conversation. But in general, I think Cancelo could do really well. Yes, he'll get the clean sheet points. Yes, he's slightly expensive than the likes of Laporte, but I think he's the most nailed defender in that Man City lineup. Now, if you have to select one, I definitely would prefer Cancelo. If you are looking for a double up, which is also an option, like the Liverpool double up, like the Chelsea double up, you can even go for a Man City double up in defense. But I still feel there's a slight risk in terms of minutes for the likes of Stones and Laporte, especially with Ruben Dias back in the frame now. The last option that we have in the defense, guys, is Matty Cash from Aston Villa. I know Villa haven't been that great. I mean, they're not keeping clean sheets. Cash's attacking output is also reduced, but the fixtures were quite tricky. And now, over the next few weeks, guys, the fixtures are becoming easier now. There could be some clean sheets in there. There could be even attacking returns. And if I have to select one defender from Aston Villa, it has to be Matty Cash. Now let's talk about a midfield. I think midfield is pretty solid in terms of the different options that we've gone for. We've not gone for any double ups. I think there are multiple and enough options to choose from depending on your budget, depending on which team you're trying to target here. I think the couple of obvious options here are Mo Salah, and in this particular draft, I think Son is also a decent option to go for. I think Salah, again, like Trent, he picks himself. He's a good captainable option for most games. Yes, he's not been in form. Yes, there are arguments. There are cases where people are not going for Salah. They're trying to go for some cheaper options and they're trying to spread some funds. But I think for this particular draft, and I personally feel that Salah, he can do really well. He can give you a lot of FPL points. You can also captain him, so there's no worries there. And of course, you are playing a bit safer. So if you are trying to protect your rank, if you're not trying to take a lot of risk, I think having Salah in your team is definitely part of that foundation. Son is a bit tricky, of course. You can argue that you don't have to go for Son. You can invest in the likes of Mount, maybe even Havertz, which we've done that in our subsequent drafts. But I think Son, as a single game week option, with the fixtures that Tottenham have, I think he's a decent option to go for. At this moment, I think for this particular structure, and if you are on a wildcard, Son might be a better option to go for. In case if you're at all targeting a Tottenham attacker, I think Son is the one to go for. The other options that we have in this draft, guys, are Saka. Of course, if you have less money, if you don't have enough money, if you can't spend this much money, you can go even for Martinelli. But I still feel Saka, even in that struggling Arsenal team at the moment, he's possibly the best attacker. He has decent underlying stats. He has good attacking numbers. It's just that the returns are slightly dried up a little bit because of Arsenal's defensive worries, because of the injuries to Partey, even to Tierney, and Lacazette also kind of missing a lot of games now. I think there is a chance that Saka can still do really, really well. So if you are trusting an Arsenal player, if you are trusting Arsenal as a team in attack, I think Saka is definitely the one to go for. In terms of other options, guys, we have Mount and Foden. Both are mid-price options. Mount has a double game week in 34. He also has a double game week in 36. And guys, the form that he's showing, I think he's a lot safer than somebody like a Havertz. There has been a slight tweak in the formation. There has been a slight tweak in the Chelsea system to play now against teams over the last few weeks. And I think Mount has really benefited from that. On the other hand, I think because of that tweak, now Havertz is playing slightly wider. And that really makes his attacking output maybe a bit lesser than Mount right now. And I think the form that Mount is in right now, guys, I think I would back him to be the best Chelsea attacking option at the moment. If you are okay taking a bit of a risk, if you are doing catch up, I think Havertz is the option for you. But in general, again, if you are playing safe, if you're trying to consolidate and protect your rank, I think Mount is the better option to go for. Mount is also slightly cheaper, so I think just keep that in mind. If you don't have enough money, you have a very good option in Mount to go for as well. Our last option is Foden. I think with the fixtures that Man City have, and we know for a fact that Man City are going to double maybe in 36 or 37. And with those fixtures, guys, I think Foden in this price bracket, I think is a good option to go for. Yes, you can argue that he's not really done anything at all from an FPL perspective over the past few weeks, but the underlying stats are okay. And I generally think that Foden would get minutes in the league, and I think there's a chance that he can get attacking returns as well. Now, in terms of the attack, I think we'll probably keep it a bit short here. We've not really spent out a lot of money. In fact, if you see, this is a very cheap attacking line, probably the cheapest throughout the season that we have gone for. And on this wildcard draft, guys, I think you can save a lot of money. I don't think so. Forwards have been doing generally well this season, and you can save money and you can invest in those premium midfield and those defensive options. We've gone for the likes of Pookie, who's done really well for that price. I think he's got about 4 goals and 2 assists over the last 6 games or something. I think those are decent numbers for Norwich. Yes, I still feel that Norwich are probably going to get relegated, but I still feel they won't go without a fight. And I think Pookie is their main man in terms of getting those goals. You also have Mateta, who's also a cheap option with Palace. Palace also has decent fixtures. Again, you don't really have to play him. You can play him along with Pookie as well if the fixture is good, or you can just select one of Pookie or Mateta for most weeks. Our final option is Gerrard, guys. He's not going to get a lot of minutes from Leeds, but I just feel is a cheap option to go for. And if you are dead-ending that spot, I think going for a cheap third striker who you're not going to play looks like the right way to go. Now, this is another draft. This is probably the second draft that we have in terms of the wild card. And in the scenario when we are not using the bench boost in Game Week 36, guys, the keeper lineup is the same. Now, instead of a double up on James and Alonso, we've gone for Amati as a cheap option. We're probably going to play a back 4 for most weeks, so we don't really have to invest a lot of money in that 5th defender. And even if he plays maybe 90 minutes, even if he doesn't get a clean sheet, that's absolutely fine. Because if someone like a James or maybe a Cancelo, maybe even a Robertson, for example, gets rested, then if he's playing, he can come on and give us at least those appearance points. In terms of the midfield, guys, we've gone for a cheaper Gordon. Now, the reason we've gone for a cheaper Gordon pick is that Everton, yes, they have doubles coming up as well. They have decent fixtures. I just don't rate them very highly in terms of the attacking output. But in general, I think Gordon is very cheap. He's not gonna cost you a lot of money, and you can go for that Everton spot. You can go for that 5th cheap midfielder spot if you want to invest a little bit heavier in attack. Now, that's exactly the reason what we've done here, guys. We have gone for Werner as a punt. I think he's also a great option to go for. It's in fact a bit tricky to choose the best 3 combinations or the best 3 players from Chelsea, but I think Werner, if he starts regular games for Chelsea, the form that he's shown so far over the last couple of weeks, I think he could be a great differential punt moving forward. And you can punt on him if you are doing a bit of a catch up in your mini leagues, or if you want to just chase ranks. Now, let's talk about the third draft, the third wildcard draft, and the one in case if you are playing a bench boost in Game Week 36. Now, in terms of defense, guys, we again have not really done anything very different. It's very similar to the first draft that we have. Now, the reason we've gone for the same or similar defense is that Chelsea is doubling in 36. Liverpool will be doubling. There could be a chance that Cancelo also doubles in 36. And we know that Cash is doubling in 36. So we have a lot of, in fact, all of our, or at least most of our defenders are doubling and will give us a good bench boost. In terms of the midfield as well, we know that Saka, Son, Salah, even Mount, all of them would have a double. I know Son would have a tricky double, so that could be a position where you could argue probably keeping a different midfielder. But in general, I think all these players are having a double game week. It'll give us a good bench boost. All of them have decent fixtures to go for, and I think this is a good set template to go for in terms of a wild card if you are using your bench boost. In terms of our attack, guys, we've not gone for a dead-ending third spot striker. We've gone for Dennis, who looks like that he could be getting more minutes or could be getting regular minutes now in that Watford lineup. He scored last week as well, and he also has a double. So I think with this, most of our players would be having a double game week. And if in fact Cancelo has that double, I think all of our players would have a double game week in 36, and it'll give a really good bench boost to us. Coming to the fourth draft, and guys, this is a slight variation in terms of the wildcard draft with a bench boost in 36. Now, instead of a double up on the Chelsea defense, guys, or maybe even the Liverpool defense, we've gone for a triple up on the Man City defense. It might sound a bit crazy that you're going for 3 players from the Man City defense, but I think you might just play 2 of them. And in case if you are going for a bench boost, I think this could also be a decent option depending on whether it fits into 36 or not. Even if Man City don't have a double, I think it's still a decent option to go for. Man City still are a very elite defense. And going for Edison, who might be a nailed option among keepers, guys, I think that could be a great call. Yes, he's a lot of money, so you might argue that it's probably not investing so much money because most weeks he's probably going to get 6 points. But I still feel he's quite nailed. And at this point, at this moment in the season, we are looking for those nailed players for our FPL teams. In terms of midfield, guys, we've gone for a cheaper option. Now, instead of Gordon, we've gone for Dewsbury Hall, who looks like, again, the most nailed player in that Leicester lineup. We know that the likes of James Maddison and Harvey Barnes are going to get rotated. We can't even depend on somebody like a Patson Daka. So I think if you really want to depend on a Leicester player, if you want to go for a Leicester player, take a punt. I think Dewsbury Hall is a decent option to go for. Again, don't really expect him to go all out and give you attacking returns every week, but he's still been playing well. His attacking stats are decent. His underlying numbers are okay. So I think if you want to take a punt, I think he's probably the decent option to go for. If you can stretch your money a little bit, I think James Maddison could still make sense, but I still feel I probably don't want to go there. In this draft, guys, we've also gone for a double up on Havertz plus Mount. Now, this is the reason because we've not gone for an Alonso or a second Chelsea defender, not even a Werner in this case, so we can really attack both the options as both of them look in really good form. Among strikers, guys, we've not gone really cheap. In terms of options, we've gone for Richarlison and Watkins as some mid-range options. And I think Richarlison, with Everton doubling, with them having decent fixtures, I think he's also on penalties. He could do well. And again, in case if you are chasing rank, in case if you are looking to do catch-up, I think the likes of Richarlison and even Watkins, I think they're decent options to go for. We know for a fact that both of these options would be nailed in most scenarios. Now, Watkins could be a tricky one because Villa could be a beach team. They could probably not have anything to play for, so there could be some rotation there, but over at least the last few weeks, over the past few game weeks, we've seen that Watkins is generally getting most minutes, and I think he's still a decent option to go for. Now, a lot of people might think of getting to Coutinho, but I still feel with those premium midfield options and a lot of options and a lot of different directions to go towards, I still feel probably not going for Coutinho looks like the play here. And if you want to punt on a Villa player with a bench boost in mind, I think Watkins could be a decent punt. So guys, these were the wildcard drafts for Game Week 34. In case if you want to use your wildcard for Game Week 34, I think there are some decent options to go for. You should have at least a combination of maybe 5 to 6 players who will set your foundation, and then you can play around depending on whether you want to take a few risks, depending on whether you want to just protect your rank and play a bit safer and then take those calls. That'll be all from my side, guys. I hope I was able to give you some clarity in terms of a wildcard team. If you are using your chip in Game Week 34, do smash that like button, guys, if you enjoyed today's video. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel as well. Now, we'll have a couple of more videos for this week, plus a deadline stream, so make sure you check all that good stuff. Keep tinkering with your FPL teams, and I'll see you in Saners next time.